Well, ladies and gentlemen, the situation involving Greenland is heating up. JD Vance commenting on it yesterday. We're going to play this, then we're going to talk about a visit that some high up people within the US government will be taking to Greenland, including Vance's wife, to watch a dog sledding race. And Greenland, their government is not too happy. This is going to be very interesting. Let's see what JD Vance has to say in talking about Denmark and Greenland and the entire situation. We've covered this so many times, but this is very important for the United States. I think it's a much higher chance of happening than Canada, especially if the Conservative Party wins the next Canadian election. It's going to be unlikely that Alberta would secede. But with Greenland, you're talking about 57,000 people. You're talking about potentially trying to diplomatically take it over, which is not easy, but it's something that can be done. They just had their elections and they said, yes, we want to be independent, but it's a slow process towards independence. Trump might want to accelerate Greenland being independent from Denmark and then Greenland joining the United States. But it's a very complicated situation. These people are not going to make it easy, which is because this is the thing with Greenland. You could understand if they were independent and Trump just said, I want to take them over. You could understand them saying, no, screw you. But they're already owned by Denmark. What's the huge issue? I mean, we're going to offer them more security. We're going to offer them more money. We're going to offer them more infrastructure. We understand all of this, but these people, they just don't want it. So it becomes this thing to where it's like, well, you don't want to escalate things, but we need to get this done. If I was Trump, that would be my message. We're not trying to escalate anything. We need to get this done, though. And let's see what JD Vance has to say.
Denmark, which controls Greenland, it's not doing its job, and it's not being a good ally. So you have to ask yourself, how are we going to solve that problem, solve our own national security? If that means that we need to take more territorial interest in Greenland, that is what President Trump is going to do, because he doesn't care about what the Europeans scream at us. He cares about putting the interests of America's citizens first.
Right, and Vance said a lot there talking about the dynamic between the United States and Europe now that Trump is in. Europe is very angry. They always want the Democrat to win because the Democrat gives Europe more. The Democrat will take from the United States and give to Europe. Now with Trump in, he takes from Europe and gives to the United States, so Europe doesn't like Trump. And we don't want Europe to like us because we want to be in front of Europe. And also Europe's very liberal. So there's multiple problems with that, but that's a NATO thing. And so this is a weird dynamic to where Trump is still in NATO, but obviously the European countries are not happy with Trump ending this war between Russia and Ukraine, giving land to Russia via annexation, and now trying to take over Greenland, which you could argue by proxy is in the EU because it is controlled by Denmark. But it's that weird situation to where technically it's not independent, but in 2009 they basically became independent outside of having a military. And right now, based on land ownership, Denmark does own Greenland. But the idea that Denmark is not doing a good job in controlling Greenland, it's impossible for them. They've just got too small of a country themselves with too low of a population, with not a high enough GDP to be able to invest into Greenland properly to actually defend Greenland. And so whether or not Greenland does need defense right now, I mean, it's not like China and Russia are going to do anything. Now, we know China's expressed interest in Greenland. They tried to buy an abandoned military base. It didn't go through. But it's something to where you look at Greenland, geographically, it would be classified as part of North America if you look at it. And people say, well, no, it's part of Europe. No, just because it's owned by Denmark doesn't mean it's part of Europe. It's actually right to the east of Canada. It's very close to Canada. And so when you've got something like that, you can understand Trump saying, and look, we understand the natural resources, the rare earths, it's trillions of dollars worth, and that's not even what we know under the ice. It's probably even more. There's just a lot of stuff. It's going to be a huge boom for the United States in terms of the resource, and it's going to help the people of Greenland. They're going to get something for that extraction, and that extraction is not happening with Denmark because they don't have the money to be able to do it. We have to invest major money in a mining infrastructure program on the Greenland coastline. This is absolutely critical for the future of the United States. Trump knows that. That's why Trump wants it. And so he's saying, well, it's all about security and stuff. And yeah, I mean, Trump's way nicer than I am. Trump's a very, just very sweet man and so nice. And so is Vance. These are very nice gentlemen. And so they're saying, we love Greenland. We want to help them. It's so evil what Denmark's doing. And this is really what's going on. And this is what's happening. So yes, it's going to be a diplomatic takeover. But now you've got diplomats from the United States visiting Greenland, and Greenland leaders lambasting U.S. delegation over a trip. How mean is it? These countries, man? They really have to understand. I don't understand. You want to be independent from Denmark. Number one, you look at the economic situation. You can't be independent from Denmark. Your economy will flop. You get money from Denmark to stay afloat. They do have a big fishing industry, but still, based on how sheltered they are in terms of their location geographically, my guess is this is the problem, and I've told people this. These people, like people in Greenland, it's like they're obsessed with the EU. They're being fed EU propaganda because of Denmark. Denmark is polluting these people with EU propaganda on Trump being a fascist, on Trump being disgusting. This is the problem with Europe, is when we get a leader in the United States that's actually America first, outside of Israel, admittedly, but he is basically America, especially when it comes to Europe, he's America first. Look at what he's doing in Ukraine. These European countries get very angry, right? They think we're all in this together, whatever. Trump's like, no, it's not how it works. That's why they're having to go through rearmaments. But these people are just, they're delusional. We're just trying to help you out. We're meeting. It's delegation to visit U.S. military base and watch dog sled race. Greenland's outgoing PM, Prime Minister, says he can no longer trust the United States. Leader of winning party says visit shows disrespect. White House says visit is a chance to learn about Greenland. Remember, Charlie Kirk and Don Jr. went to Greenland right after the election win by Trump. That was back in like December, and it was a tour, and you have to do these things when you take over territory. It's propaganda, and we're going to have to start pushing the propaganda onto these people because we have to allow for this takeover to happen. So I don't know why they're angry about this, but listen, these people, I think they realize that we're going to have to annex their country, and they're getting very angry about it. And it's going to set up this whole jousting match between Trump and the EU over Greenland. And then Greenland's going to say, and their citizens are going to say, no, we would rather do an economic partnership with the EU. The EU is about to be taken over by Russia. I'm just joking. I'm just getting sick and tired of the EU. I really am. And like, I like Europe. It's just they've gone so far left and they've destroyed their cultures. It's sad. I'm just so done with, you know what? Just like Russia. I'm kidding. Just let Russia take them over now. I'm just joking. But seriously, like, I'm just getting annoyed with the EU. But this could be the issue. Imagine Greenland says, we want to be independent from Denmark. We know we need assistance, though. We need assistance. So let's do a deal with the EU or do a deal with NATO. But who even knows if NATO even exists at that point? Because they're going to want military protection because they're not going to have a big military. If they even are permitted to have a military, which right now they're not because that's the agreement with Denmark owning them. They can't have their own force. The question becomes, will they try and get assistance from Europe or from the United States or from, it's not going to be Canada, but the problem becomes if they want to do a partnership with the EU. If they say, this is what we're going to do, we're going to go independent. So technically we're independent. We shed ourselves of Denmark. So we're totally independent, but we know we need money. So it's called an economic partnership. And also a defense agreement or something like that to where they get, because they're going to need defense from someone. They just don't have, if someone invades them, it's going to be very hard for them because their population is so small. So they need defense. But based on where their location is, NATO would have to assist them in some way anyways. But their location suggests they're never going to be invaded. It wouldn't make sense for an Eastern power to do that. It's kind of like the whole thing with Canada. Canada knows how safe they are because of the United States. Greenland is in between Europe and the United States, so it's like nothing really is going to happen to them. And also, I mean, the climate, it's extremely cold there. But the problem becomes if they want to really be independent and then they set up an economic and defensive relationship with the EU and not the United States, they're being pumped a bunch of propaganda by the EU saying Trump's horrible, he's fascist, he's terrible. I mean, Trump and the United States have wanted Greenland for a while. And the difference between us and the EU is we will be able to extract resources and rare earths and things like that with an actual infrastructure we set up. And Greenland is going to get some of that money, and we'll also be able to help Greenland's economy a lot more than the EU would. I'm not saying this is going to be a bidding match between the United States and the EU. I'm just saying the people of Greenland are being pumped a bunch of propaganda because of Denmark that the EU is good and Trump is evil and he's horrible and he's going to try and take over everyone. And so when you have that, it does become an issue. And so I have seen some of the polls, and I said it's going to be a tough thing to do. You have to offer these people stuff. You do. Because, and listen, for Greenland, yeah, this is probably what they wanted. They either wanted a bidding match or they just want to join the EU. I'm not sure exactly what, but they're going to want an offer from the United States. I mean, listen, if this was 1905, we would land troops on Greenland and then we would annex the territory. But apparently you can't do that anymore. So we have to do this diplomatically and give money and stuff. But we want to give money. We have to set up infrastructure on Greenland anyways. Think about it. But if you go down in this article, I guess they're just not happy. There's going to be a lot of security. And yeah, we'll have to see what happens with this dog sled race. Here you can see Trump has made the U.S. annexation of Greenland a major talking point since Don Jr. paid a private visit. So they went in January. I think they went in early January. And then you can see, this is the quote, "Until recently, we could trust Americans who were our allies and our friends with whom we enjoyed working closely, but that time is over." So it's a very clear shift that obviously when you're talking about going there and they realize the writing is on the wall, the U.S. is going to be aggressively trying to annex this country. And it becomes this diplomatic jousting match, if you will, when it comes to the fight over Greenland. We know when it comes to the election, Greenland did vote to be independent of Denmark, but they voted for the party that wanted to be a slow process. In essence, there's like 5 different parties with their election, but the top 2 parties, the party that won wants a slow separation. So they do want to be independent, but it's going to take a while. It's not as radical. The party that came in second place wants immediate independence, which honestly you cannot do. Like Greenland, well, I guess they could do it, but they would be exposed significantly if they just became independent of Denmark with no protection from anyone. You would have to have a deal in place if you were to be independent from Denmark with the United States, with the UK, with the EU, something like that. You couldn't just, they could, I guess, just become independent, but it would significantly hurt their economy with the amount of money that they take from Denmark. And if you're Denmark, you have to be thinking, you should have given Trump Greenland in 2019. You probably would have gotten $30 billion for it. Now it's hard for them to get anything because they have no leverage. Greenland doesn't even want to be a part of Denmark. So what can Denmark really say at this point? That's why I really haven't heard much from Denmark recently, because like, what are they supposed to say? They're like, well, Greenland is ours. Well, now you're looking like these people do not want to be under your, and they're not under your rule. They have their own government and everything in Greenland, but it's like, technically they are still owned by Denmark. But it's like, there's really nothing Denmark can do at this point because Greenland wants to be independent of them. If Greenland said, no, we still want to be with Denmark, and Trump tried to forcibly take it over, that would be a different component entirely, because then, worst case, Greenland would get significant compensation for Denmark, or it would be an even bigger situation to where the United States would be potentially invading. It's not an invasion, it's an exercise. It's an exercise on a remote island. I think it'll be like, but I don't think Trump's going to go there, but that would be if Greenland was like, we love Denmark, we love how they rule and everything like that. But that's just not how it is. They don't want to be a part of Denmark. But again, I've told people they also don't want to join the United States. So you have to offer them stuff to allow them to join it. And for Greenland, you want to play hardball. You do, because you want to hold out for more. And again, if this was like 1903, you're not going to get anything. You are going to get stuff, because we're going to set up an infrastructure on Greenland, and we're going to help your country out, and we're going to set up more military bases, so you're going to get security. But I'm just saying, now in 2025, you have to do all of this diplomatically, I guess. I mean, the problem is, it's like, if you have to weigh it. Well, if we performed a military exercise on Greenland, is that going to be a talking point that's used against Trump? There's talks of NATO possibly sending the European countries in NATO sending troops to Greenland to protect the island, or I guess secure the island. You're going to secure the island against the United States? Are you kidding me? NATO, we are NATO. What are you're going to send? You're going to send NATO troops against the leaders of NATO? Who do you think you are? I would have left NATO the second I heard that if I were Trump. No, you can't do that. You can't act like that. But that's just extremely disrespectful to even suggest something like that. After all the money that we've poured into Ukraine, now they're trying to downplay. How about all these European countries trying to downplay our involvement in Ukraine? They're like, well, actually, it's only 84 billion. Well, no, it's like 180 billion. When Trump says it's like 360, he rounds up. It's still 180 billion in total foreign aid. And we're just sick of paying it. And look, the thing is, we have a good relationship with Zelensky. The United States does. We've got a very good relationship with these people. Trump can get along with these people. He's had to have a good relationship with Putin. Trump comes in and it's like, well, World War III is going to happen. Europe wants it. The liberals are obsessed with war. They want there to be this huge, wide-scale, just global conflict. They hate Putin. They wanted Putin removed, which would have been worse. It'd create a power vacuum, and then you'd really kick off World War III. Because remember, they said, let's remove Putin and start World War III. They wanted a coup to happen in Russia, and then the top military experts were like, no, that's even worse, because then that creates the power vacuum, which would then turn Russia against the West even more, because a lot of those Russians love Putin. Remember, they wanted to do that, and thankfully that never happened. But then Trump gets in, he's looking at the situation, he's like, the front line hasn't moved in a year and a half, and now recently it's moved again because they're trying to get the proper, I mean, both Russia and Ukraine want to be in great positions for when the peace deal gets negotiated, so they have more leverage. But Trump comes in and he sees this just mass war and this hellscape and says, we have to end this. And so that's what he's doing. And, you can talk about the stuff with Israel, Palestine. I mean, do you really, we're going to do a two-state solution, then the war's going to happen again in 2 years. This isn't, come on. And then people are like, well, you can't expel the Palestinians. Well, I mean, there's really nothing. These people are ruled by a terrorist organization. What do you want me to say? And then he's like, well, how about other people? Trump's in bed with Israel. Well, then why'd Trump release the JFK files, which exposed Israel? Think about it. But listen, when it comes to this situation with Greenland, these people are going to play hard to get. They're going to play hardball. They don't like the United States. This is all Euro propaganda being blasted. And they were out doing protests in like 10-degree weather outside in Greenland and against the United States. They didn't want to join the United States. But listen, let's give our formal offer to Greenland, because this is just one of those situations. You know how these things go. It's all politics. It's very, ooh, we're never going to join you. Well, why doesn't Greenland actually talk to us about their future plan? You want to be independent of Denmark? Are you going to be able to support yourselves, really? And look, for them, in terms of their location, maybe it is better for them to be, well, I don't think they can be independent. I think they need to do some type of deal, which even if they did a deal to where they got support, technically they could stay independent and just do some type of economic deal where, I mean, I'm not even sure how you would do a deal with the EU, because the EU is so poor at this point. But you could do a deal with some of the bigger countries in the EU, possibly, and in exchange for mineral extraction. It would be those countries giving Greenland money for their economy and their GDP, and then they would be able to extract minerals. But it wouldn't be the full-scale operation the United States would have, because we're trying to get more control of rare earths. That's why there's all this talk about the Congo, and now Trump might want to do a deal with them, although that was more of the African leader approaching Trump about doing a deal, because China is just taking all the cobalt from the Congo, and they've got control of like 80% of it. There's several African countries that are horribly in debt, because this is what China does with their Belt and Road Initiative, to where they're just horribly predatory, low interest loans. These countries cannot come close to paying them back. It's all infrastructure. They build roads for them, and then they say, well, you can't pay us back. We need to take things. And so they just own all the cobalt. It's like 80% of it. And so Trump might have to do a deal with the Congo now to try and get control of some of that. But that's a whole nother thing. I mean, this is the whole thing. We're all fighting for these rare earths. That's why I said Greenland was so important. Now you've got Trump doing a deal possibly with Putin in the Donbass to try and get rare earths. You've got Trump doing a deal with Zelensky because Zelensky wants U.S. involvement in Ukraine for the foreseeable future to try and stabilize Ukraine so they don't get reinvaded by Russia. And Trump says, well, that deal's probably still going to happen. It was going to happen. That's what they were signing when Zelensky came to the White House. And then Zelensky was very disrespectful, and Trump and Vance are so nice to these people, and they just don't treat us well. I don't know what it is. But listen, when it comes to this, you know how it is. These people are just angry. They want stuff from the United States. All right, well, we'll give every citizen. And they're like, well, no, you can't bribe the citizens. Well, no, you can via the government. The United States could give the government of Greenland $10 billion, and then Greenland can distribute that money to each citizen. That's illegal. You're like, no, you can't bribe them. Yeah, you can. You have to give the money to their government, and then they distribute it. So that might have to be something that ends up happening. I mean, we don't know. But the point of it is, these people, they don't want the United States to rule them, but they also don't want to be ruled by Denmark. So then what do you want to do? You want to get in bed with the EU? Really? After the United States leaves NATO, and we'll see how this is like, the Europe is failing. Canada is failing. Now Canada's talking about they want more immigrants. Europe keeps voting left-wing. Any right-wing person in Europe that comes out and says, no, we're sick of all these immigrants, they're destroying the major cities, they get labeled racist. And it still is happening. It's like it's just they label you racist anytime you say no immigration. In the United States, it's different. See, even the moderates are like, no, we want no immigration. That's why Bernie Sanders has to come out now and say, no, we want a secure border, because in the United States, we're more level in terms of this stuff, and we realize when it gets bad. So, yeah, that's just the situation. Vance is talking about it. He's saying Denmark is not doing their job securing the island, securing Greenland. And, I mean, they can't do their job. They don't have the population to properly secure it. They don't have the resources to do it. They're not a strong enough country to be able to secure an island like Greenland that's that large. And with how important the Arctic is, top military experts say the United States is going to take over the Northwest Passage. It has to happen. It has to happen because, and we're also going to have a presence probably in Hudson Bay and the Davis Strait and other waterways within that Arctic region above North America and above the Atlantic Ocean. That's where Trump really wants the Arctic Empire to be. It's Nunavut, it's Alaska, it's Greenland, it's Northwest Territories, it's Yukon. That's going to be an American, I would imagine, an American Arctic Empire, because, and even the experts, like, it's going to have to happen. The Arctic is going to be so important in terms of trade, in terms of the shipping lanes, for the United States to control that. And this is just like a start. It's a long period, but this is really how things happen. So this is all politics. We're gonna have to see with this Greenland thing. I mean, you've got U.S. people going to Greenland now. They're scoping out the island. They're trying to give positive propaganda to fight off against the EU propaganda that's being pumped into Greenland via Denmark. And we'll see if they're able to do it. But it seems like these Greenland leaders are not too happy with the United States. And you know what? We can easily go to the negotiating table with the Greenland leaders and say, this is what we can offer you, and let's do a deal. And I think that's what's going to end up happening. But either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.